Do you find yourself easily distracted? Maybe your mind's just all over the place because of high car payments? Well, then maybe you need a little focus. That's right beside me today, I got a 2012 Ford Focus with 115,000 miles on it. Now that's a little bit lower mileage than we usually do for these high miles reviews. Obviously, there's lots of cars with higher miles than that out there. But these have been out for so long that I think we can still get a pretty good idea on the reliability and common issues with these cars. Ford sold a ton of these as a cheap starter, fuel-efficient commuter little car. And there is a ton out there if you look on Facebook Marketplace or anything for really decent prices. Today we're gonna figure out if you should buy a high mileage Ford Focus and if it's gonna hold up over the long haul. We'll take a walk around the outside, we'll talk about the common problems, and then we're gonna decide if the Ford Focus is a buy or a bust. Starting up front on our Ford Focus, now I think Ford did a really nice job on the design of these cars. I think they have aged well, they still look fairly modern, and I just think that for a small little car, they're pretty stylish. Now there is a few things, if you were looking at a used one, that you're gonna wanna look out for on the outside of these cars. Number one is rust. This particular car, no issues with rust on it at all. If you are looking at a used one in the rust belt, the wheel wells tend to rust out pretty bad, and also the rockers. Now the rockers are covered with plastic, so you're not gonna see it right away. You gotta get down underneath and actually look underneath the plastic rocker covers on the bottom of the car there. The other thing is paint fade is pretty typical on these. This car has a little bit of it, and headlight oxidation is normal. Otherwise, it held up pretty well now for being nearly 15 years old. Under the hood of our Focus here, we got the 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. It makes 160 horsepower, 146 pound-feet of torque. Now those are actually pretty solid numbers for a small car like this. No, you're not gonna win any drag races, but it should be plenty of get up and go for this size of car. Now every once in a while we get an engine that the common problems list is extremely short, and thankfully Ford built a really solid little 4-cylinder here. And there is a few little common problems, but nothing major, nothing that I am terribly concerned about, but we'll still talk about them here. Number one is probably the thermostat housing is known to leak coolant. So that could turn into a larger issue if you let the engine overheat or it runs all the coolant out of it. But just keep an eye on your coolant level. You should be good to go. It's not a terribly expensive fix or terribly difficult one. So, but it could cause you a larger issue if you let the engine overheat. Now, the other common issue is gonna be just like common check engine light thing, and that's with the evap system. It could be the evap canister, it could be the purge solenoid. Again, these are not major issues that you probably won't even notice that the car runs any different or anything like that. It's just for emission stuff, and it is not expensive to fix. The last issue that you might notice is like a clunk. Now you might think that it's the transmission or something like that, and we will talk about the transmission here in a second, but motor mounts are pretty common for going bad on these cars. So if you notice a noticeable clunk, probably have a bad motor mount. Otherwise, this engine is pretty much rock solid. They're known to run to crazy amounts of miles with very few issues. Now this engine is made into a 6-speed automatic transmission. Ford calls it the Power Shift. It is a dual clutch automatic, which basically means that it's more like a manual and it uses solenoids to shift the transmission rather than how a traditional automatic transmission works. On paper, it kind of sounds like maybe a good idea, but in reality, it created a quite unreliable transmission, and these are known to have a ton of issues, even at lower mileage. The solenoids are known to fail. The clutches inside the transmission are known to fail, and basically all of these pretty much require transmission replacement. The other one that they're famous for is the shift fork breaking as well. So basically anything internally in the transmission can go bad. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit more on the test drive as well, but even when these are working properly, they do shift and work a little bit differently and feel a little differently than a regular automatic. So if you were looking at a used one, you might think, oh, that was a weird shift, or, you know, acceleration felt a little different, something like that. And that is typical even when these are working properly. But transmission issue is definitely the most concerning issue with these cars. And if you're looking at a used one, you definitely have to take it out on a nice, good test drive and make sure that the transmission's working properly. Moving on to the interior here of our Ford Focus. And I'll tell you that it is not perfect, but I think Ford did a nice job with the overall style and things inside here. Yes, there's still a bunch of cheap plastic. You're gonna find that on any car in this category out on the market. There's not gonna be a bunch of luxurious materials or anything like that. And this has a few little common wear issues, but I do think it looks and feels a little bit nicer than some of the other cheap cars out on the market. Number one problem that I noticed on these cars, really, and you'll notice that there is seat covers. And that's not because the seat material tears or that it really wears out or anything like that. But what it is these seats are a material that gets stained. This is a common Ford issue. They had it on their F-150 pickups and just a couple of different cars that they did, where even if water gets spilled on the seat, it shows like a stain. And you pretty much just have to put seat covers on to cover it up or keep cleaning them all the time. The other wear and tear items are anything that was kind of glued together. The glue has failed or is starting to fail on these cars. Headliner, the material up there will start to fall off. And then the door panel material, the cloth on there will also start to come off as these age and the glue fails. Otherwise, as far as actual comfort, things like that, it's pretty decent inside. No real complaints. Now, as far as electronics, there's two kind of main problems that you can look out for. Number one is for sure the radio. This still uses Microsoft Sync, which is flawed. It's just not a good system as far as connectivity. These radios were known to just fail on their own, and it's a design that's so integrated into the dash that really it's tough to even find a good replacement one that looks right and works with the rest of the car and things like that. So just a little bit annoying that way. A lot of times you end up having to replace the radio. This one does work fine. Now the next thing is, if you're looking at a used one, you definitely want to check out all of the HVAC controls, because the blend doors are known to click, fail, not switch between hot and cold or feet and head, any of those things. So you want to check those out because those are a more in-depth thing to replace. Moving on to the rear seat here of our Focus. And as far as comfort, it's really actually not that bad. I mean, this is a small car, so you're not riding in a Cadillac here, but I have some legroom, not a lot, but enough. And I got enough headroom. I'm 5'9". This front seat is where I would normally sit. The seat itself actually sits up higher than a lot of seats in the rear row of cars, and it's pretty comfortable. No, it's not fancy by any stretch, but it's also pretty decent even for an average sized adult back here. As far as wear and tear, really nothing too much to mention back here, other than you got the same material on the seats as you do up front, so it will get stained up over time. And now, as far as trunk space, really good, nice big opening, really decent trunk space inside. You're not going to have any complaints. For the amount of people that are most of the time going to be riding inside this car, you're going to have plenty of space to bring along whatever you need. Out on the road now in our Ford Focus. Now, as I pulled out onto the road today, it just made me think that I should mention the transmission again, because there is like a little delay or engagement you will feel of where the transmission, like the clutches, grab. That is completely normal for these transmissions when they are operating correctly. It just feels a little different than your normal automatic transmission. Now, we do have a good clear stretch of road in front of us, so we're going to get on it. I'll tell you what, it's like not fast, but it's borderline a little bit quick, especially for this size of a car. Engine working good, sounds good. Transmission shifted through the gears just fine. No weird clunks, anything like that. Now, if anyone is buying one of these cars, I'm sure that fuel mileage is going to be one of your number one concerns. That's why you buy a small, commuter car like this. And these are rated pretty highly, 27 and 38 out on the highway. So I got no complaints as far as fuel mileage go. Does really solid there. Now, there's new cars out there that get much better than that, but remember, this is a 2012, and that was probably about as good as you were gonna get for this size of a car back in 2012. As we were driving down our sort of bumpy road here, I really don't have any crazy clunks or anything like that, but I do hear one common problem that you should look out for if you're test driving one, and that is wheel bearing. I can hear it a little bit in the rear, and definitely have a little bit of a hum. So if you have an ABS light on or you notice a humming sound, a lot of times it is a bad wheel bearing, and that's a pretty common issue on these cars. Now, if you are taking a car on a test drive and you hear a hum like a wheel bearing or something like that, there is a way to diagnose for sure that that's what it is, and that is to kind of aggressively steer the car back and forth and see if the sound changes, or if you can pinpoint where that sound is coming from, because that'll help you diagnose that bad wheel bearing. If the sound changes, it's probably not something in the actual like transmission or some other issue. It is probably just a wheel bearing. We are gonna do one more pull here. Yeah, it works really well, actually. Yeah, I have no complaints on this particular car at all. Now, other things for suspension to look out for, I know we mentioned wheel bearings, but the power steering, it feels real tight and nice. If it doesn't, or it feels inconsistent, or you got a bunch of looseness, it could be worn suspension components. It also could be a failing steering rack. Pretty common issue on these cars. Back from the test drive, and now it's time to decide if the Ford Focus is a buy or a bust. The market on these cars is kind of all over the place. You'll see them from dealers, nice clean ones for somewhere around $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. And then you'll also find a bunch on Facebook Marketplace for $3,000, $4,000, and $5,000. And then there's also some out there that need a transmission that are much, much cheaper. You'll see a lot of those. Obviously, you guys know now that the biggest concern with these cars is transmission issues. The power shift dual clutch transmission, which sounds really good on paper, just doesn't hold up for the long haul. The biggest factor in these reviews is whether a car will make it to 250 or 300,000 miles without major issues, and the engine in these definitely will. And then I think in almost all cases, the transmissions will not. They're just too trouble prone, which makes my decision today, unfortunately, quite easy. The Ford Focus is a bust. Now, they do have a manual transmission, and that might make my decision different, but the automatics do have a fair amount of issues, unfortunately. If you have one of these and have a ton of miles on it and you've had no issues, I want to hear all about that. Or if you've had a terrible experience or I missed something, put all that info in the comments down below. I appreciate you following along. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.